Hi guys, and welcome to the Stephen King Sematary Club. Hi guys, we are starting with chapter 11 from The Dead Zone today. Last we heard, John had known that there was a fire taking place when he couldn't have known it, and his physical therapist and several of the nurses in the hospital now all know for certain about his talent. So that's where we begin this time. And reporters have descended on the hospital. They are clamoring for more information about this, and they want to talk to Johnny. So he goes to speak with them. Wyzak is by his side, and Wyzak had kind of said, "Are you sure you want to do this? I don't think it's a good idea." And Johnny's like, "Yep, gotta do it." So they ask for a demonstration, and Johnny's like, "No, I'm not gonna, perform for you. That's just ridiculous." And some reporter hands him a St. Christopher medal, and Johnny gets a vision. He knows that it belonged to this guy's sister. He knows that she died of a heart attack, but she had done years and years of drugs, like hard drugs. And the reporter gets livid. He accuses Johnny of lying. He is pissed off. He strikes him, so he hits Johnny. Johnny falls over and hits his head. So that's just perfect. Then the reporter stands up and he's stumbling to the door and he faints. So Johnny is upset and he's like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't mean for this to happen." And he's trying to kind of, I guess, get confirmation from the other reporters that, it wasn't his fault. This guy brought it on himself, whatever. And the reporters are agreeing with him, but there's one who's like, yeah, I agree with you, just don't touch me. Like, everyone is afraid of him now. Everyone wants to cower from his touch because the incident left them really disturbed. After all of this hoopla in the lobby of the hospital, Johnny goes back up to his room and he's talking with Dr. Wyzak. He gets a call. So it's Johnny's father saying that Herb and Vera were watching the news conference on TV and Vera suffered a stroke during it. And so Johnny blames himself. He feels horrible. He feels like, if he hadn't performed as such, his mother would not have had a stroke. All of which is ridiculous. She hasn't been taking her medication. She's been in very poor health lately, and all of her religious mania is causing her to neglect her body, and she's just in bad shape. It was inevitable that this was going to happen, something like this. And, Sam Wyzak is telling him, "It's not your fault. This is not something that you need to blame yourself for." So we kind of have notes of Larry Underwood where, Johnny is putting a lot of pressure on himself, a lot of blame on himself. Johnny even tells his father that he blames himself for his mother's stroke, and his father twists his ear and he's like, "Hey, not your fault, shut up, don't want to hear about it, don't feel sorry for yourself." So Johnny manages to get in to see his mother in her room, and she talks to him about how this is God's plan and how he has a duty and a responsibility, yada yada, and he leaves and she dies soon after. So the news people have all reported on Johnny and his psychic ability, all this stuff, and Sarah and Walt are reading the newspaper at home, and Walt keeps saying that Johnny is not really lying exactly, but he's basically implying that Johnny is milking the situation and he's not really psychic. And Sarah keeps insisting Johnny wouldn't lie. Johnny is, there's just no good way to defend Johnny because she knows. He told her about her missing ring, but she can't exactly tell Walt about that. So she believes that Johnny has some kind of psychic ability, but she can't really defend him to Walt without telling him everything, and she doesn't want to do that. Sarah is becoming more and more disenfranchised, I guess, with Walt, and more bitter because now Johnny is awake, and she realizes, if she had held out for 4.5 years, which would have been really difficult, she could, be with him now. And she feels cheated, Johnny feels cheated, they all feel cheated, and it's understandable. And Sarah thinks about Walt, quote, "He was a good man, a steady man. He loved her and Denny, but suddenly her soul cried out for Johnny and the 5 years together of which they had been robbed, or the lifetime together, a child with darker hair." Page 191. So Johnny is finally released from the hospital. He goes to live with his dad. So after his mom has died Now it's just the two of them living as bachelors back in his hometown. And he keeps getting a whole bunch of mail. People send him things, mementos. They want him to do things for him. They want him to tell them things about their lives. And he's touched some of the objects, and a lot of them are horrifying. So he starts not wanting to touch anything that people send him, and he just sends it all back. And it says he sends it at his own expense, which I think is insane. I would just throw it away, or I would probably mark return to sender and do it that way. So Sarah and Denny are going to be in town visiting an old friend, and she says, while I'm in town, is it alright if I stop by? If not, it's totally cool, just let me know one way or the other. And, Walt's out of town, so it would just be me and Denny. And Johnny isn't sure what to do, if he should take her up on the offer or not. He doesn't want to, but he also knows that he's going to. Quote, he still loved Sarah Bracknell, and he had to remind himself constantly that she was gone, replaced by another woman who was 5 years older and the mother of a small boy. Page 198. So he sends her a letter saying, yeah, let's get together, when you're in town. And meanwhile, a guy from Inside View comes by, which is kind of a trashy magazine, like the Examiner, Inquirer, whatever those things are that you see in the supermarket lines. And this guy offers him a job as a psychic on retainer, I guess, for this publication. And he says that, you don't even have to write your own stories. We will take care of it for you. You just kind of put your name to them, and you'll only have to write a few articles per year. You'll get $30,000 a year for 2 years, and then they'll talk about renewing his contract. And Johnny just is so disgusted with this man, he literally picks him up and throws him off the porch. And we find out that Sam Wyzak has given Johnny some advice, telling him, quote, don't let anyone rope you into the role of consulting Swami, John. Give no encouragement and they will forget. It may seem heartless to you at first. Most of them are misguided people with too many problems and only the best of intentions. But it is a question of your life, your privacy, so be firm. Page 199. So now we jump over to Stilson. He is currently a mayor. He's going to run for the House of Representatives as an independent, and he is in the process of blackmailing Chuck Gendron into being his campaign manager. And he takes photos of this banker having an affair with a woman in his office. So he's got photos, he blackmails him, he says, I need about $50,000 to start, so, go raise that money or I'm going to let everyone know about your indiscretions. Sarah and Denny end up coming to visit Johnny, and Denny takes an instant liking to Johnny, which Sarah says is unusual. I guess usually he's a little more guarded and doesn't like new people, but he seems to love Johnny. Johnny had carefully let Sarah know that his father works until 4:30, and then he comes home for dinner. So, he has put that out there, hoping that, giving her all the information she needs about what time to arrive. So she arrives at 12:15, which kind of means she wants some alone time with Johnny. So they put Denny down for a nap, and then they have a roll in the hay, literally in the barn. Herb comes home, they have a very lovely evening, they eat dinner together, Denny plays with some of Johnny's old toys that Herb had made for him, and Johnny wonders if Herb suspects the shenanigans that went on. Quote, this afternoon, she and I consummated a marriage that never was, and tonight he's playing with his grandson. Page 223. So they part ways and they decide to just basically not keep in touch because the temptation would be too great for an affair or for some other life-ruining event. And they don't see each other for 3 years. So the guy who got thrown off of the porch has written an expose in Inside View saying that Johnny is a fraud and that he is a self-confessed fraud. Like, why would Johnny have ever confessed that? And there's no hard evidence, nothing. It's just this guy's word, this guy's little story. Johnny actually takes it as a good thing. He's kind of like, fine, now everyone will leave me alone. They won't ask me questions anymore. Now he's getting a mixture of hate mail and, good mail at the same time. And then eventually just dries up. Quote, "It seemed that for everyone who was anxious to be touched, to be informed, to be in contact with Johnny's peculiar talent, there was another who regarded him as a kind of leper," page 228. So he has noticed that there are lots of people who want his aid and who are really eager to participate in this psychic performance, and then he's got a lot of people who don't touch him anymore, who are a little bit keeping him at arm's length, and he's starting to feel kind of lonely and a little sad about it. Johnny gets a call from Sheriff George Bannerman from Castle Rock, and apparently he got the number from Sam Wyzak, which pisses Johnny off because Sam was the one who gave him this huge speech about, keep your personal life separate from this, shield yourself, don't try and help people out, don't feel obligated, just keep a low profile. So Bannerman is calling in regards to the Castle Rock Strangler, who is also known as the November Killer. Castle Rock Strangler has just committed his 6th murder. The first was Alma Frechette. Second was an elderly woman who was about 71. Third was a junior high school student. Fourth was Carol Dunbarger, who we heard about being found in the snow. Fifth was Etta Ringgold. And the most recent murder is a 9-year-old girl named Mary Kate Hendriesen. And she was going through the town commons where Alma was killed, that first victim. She was going through the town commons as a student. She was allowed to go between the school and the library with a pass, and she was walking by herself. And as she was coming back, on her way back from the library to school, she was grabbed by him. He raped her and killed her, like all the other victims. So at first, Johnny wants nothing to do with this, and then once he hears about the 9-year-old girl from a news program, he's like, you know what, I really should help. And he calls Bannerman back, and he's like, okay, let's do this. So they meet at a diner, and Johnny kind of proves a little bit to Bannerman that he is psychic. He tells him some details about his life. Bannerman says, quote, "The thing that bothers me most is the lack of hair or skin under the victim's fingernails. They all must have struggled, but we don't have as much as a centimeter of skin," page 250. So Bannerman says, we have one piece of evidence that we think could be from this guy, and it's a cigarette box, like a cigarette packet. And, we aren't sure it's his, but we're pretty sure that, the killer was sitting on this bench chain smoking, and he left his cigarette box behind when he was done with it, and we're not positive. So Johnny is taken to Castle Rock. He wants to help. He wants to touch the cigarette package, and nothing comes to him. No visions, nothing. So he's like, you know what? Let's go to the commons and check out the bench and the area. So there are reporters when they came in to the police precinct who recognize him from the hospital, and they're kind of oohing and ahhing, like, why is he here, kind of thing. And so they all follow them. George Bannerman and Johnny Smith, they follow these two men. Johnny grabs the bench with both of his hands, and he has this insanely intense vision. Quote, "This morning a killer had been sitting here. Johnny could feel him," page 256. So Johnny is in this trance, and he is talking like someone else, and he has taken on the facial features of someone else, but also like a morphing of him and this person that he is channeling. And Bannerman sees it, and he's freaked out at this whole thing. It's very disturbing. It's very draining for Johnny. Johnny is convinced that the slickness that was referenced earlier is because the guy is wearing a raincoat with a hood. So no matter how anyone struggles, they can't get a grip because he is just completely slippery. They proceed to the bandstand. Bannerman kind of wants to stop, but Johnny's like, no, I have to see this through. He gets onto the bandstand, and he just experiences this entire sensation, the struggles of rape, the screams, the excitement that the guy felt, and just the horror of it all. And the murder, and he knows who it is. He tells the sheriff, "It's one of your officers, it's Frank Dodd." So first, Bannerman won't accept it, but then he starts looking into it with Johnny. They start comparing time cards with against the murders and find out that Frank Dodd could have done these murders. And then what kind of seals the deal is Frank Dodd was out of town for a good chunk of time, and there were no murders in the Castle Rock area, but there was a strangled girl who was raped and killed out in the place where Frank Dodd was. So they walk down the street to the Dodd residence, and the mom, Henrietta, won't let them in. She's like opening the door, talking to them, doesn't want to help them in any way, and finally Bannerman's like, you know what, I gotta talk to my deputy, I gotta come in, and he pushes her out of the way, and Johnny follows him. Henrietta grabs Johnny. Quote, Henrietta Dodd made a grab for him. Johnny caught her wrist, and a terrible pain flared in his head, dwarfing the sullen thud of the headache, and the woman felt it too. The two of them stared at each other for a moment that seemed to last forever, an awful, perfect understanding. For that moment, they seemed welded together, page 270. And Johnny knows that she knew. This whole time, she has known that her son has raped and killed all these women or girls. And he's just completely taken aback, totally horrified, and what do you do with that information? So they go upstairs, they find Frank. It's a very gruesome scene. He is in the bathroom, he has cut his throat from ear to ear, and all I can think of is Jane Fonda's mother died that same way. And the blood just gushed everywhere. He has a sign around his neck that says, I confess on it, and he's got his raincoat draped on it. So that's the end of that. Soon after that, Johnny gets a letter from the guy who hired him for the teaching job saying that, it was put to a vote and you were decided to be a bad decision for the board because you are kind of too much of a controversial figure. His contract is pretty much revoked, and the guy who's writing the letter to him says, I think you have legal recourse and you should probably follow through on that because, you signed that contract in good faith. Some of us do still want you, it's just that we were outvoted, that kind of thing. And Johnny thinks, quote, at any rate, he had fulfilled his mother's prophecy. If God had had a mission for him, then he had done it. No matter now that it had been a kamikaze mission. He had done it. He was quits. Page 278. Have a spooky day.